sick and we didn't have service in person for a while. But when you asked me, I immediately knew what I wanted to speak about, something that's been on my mind for a while. And actually, last time Derek Hall was up here, I mentioned to him, and he actually told me that he had been thinking about doing the same thing at his church. The topic is simple, and it's one that we're all very familiar with, but it's one that we possibly know, we know so well, we know so in and out, that we never really truly stop to consider. And the topic is hymns, the hymns that we sing. And of course, we have two different hymnals that we use together, giving us 600 or 700 songs of praise and prayer at our disposal. And we know many, perhaps hundreds of these songs backwards and forwards, and that can be a great blessing. How many times in your life have you been uplifted on a rough day by a favorite hymn that entered your mind at just the moment of need? But I believe there is also a danger in our comfort, and frankly, that is always true. There is always danger in comfort in our spiritual lives, and that's a topic for another time. But the danger we face with our hymns and the comfort in our hymns is that when Brother John or Brother Dave calls out for us to sing, Have Thine Own Way, Lord, for example, we turn the page number to 559, and we see those familiar words. We see those familiar notes, and the pianist starts playing the familiar melody. And oftentimes, the danger with our comfort is our brain goes into autopilot. Any semblance of the Holy Spirit that we haven't managed to quench before the worship services began are now met with an icy cold bucket of water in the form of complacency. We sing the words, of course, but we never think about what they say, what they mean to us. Let's take that hymn for example. Thou art the potter and I am the clay. Mold me and make thee after thy will. We don't mean it though. We're just saying words so many times. Of course, deep in the recesses of our soul, we understand these words, and hopefully we do believe these words. But just words without anything else emanating from our spirits are just that. They're just empty words. They have no meaning. I could go on, but I think we all get the point. Pastor told me I only have 5 minutes, so that's not going to happen, but we'll move on. So, listen, for a while I've been wanting to kind of discuss, taking a look at some of the hymns that we know well, and maybe looking at some backstory or some biblical or personal application from those songs, just so that we can maybe more truly consider the words that we are singing, instead of just mindlessly reading them off the page, which is so easy for us to do. So I wrote down some notes about the author and the backstory. We're going to speak this morning briefly about the song, the hymn I Surrender All. Because it's one that when I think of hymns that we sing, I believe personally that it's the most difficult song to sing. And I'm not speaking of musical complexity or the fact that it falls outside of my range of half an octave, roughly, that I have. But the words are difficult to sing if we're being honest with ourselves about our condition. How much of our lives have we really surrendered? Now, of course, and I've had this discussion with the pastor, I believe he's mentioned it from the pulpit, but no human being alive has ever been able to say, with the exception of Jesus Christ, that we surrendered all. If you believe that you surrendered all, frankly, I believe you're showing your spiritual weakness, and there's no way. We cannot surrender all. It's not possible as long as we are inside of these human bodies. And that's fine. We understand that we can still sing the song, but we need to sing it in a prayerful manner. It's not that we're saying, I have surrendered all. I have accomplished this. The point of the hymn is it's a prayer. We're singing, it is my desire, Lord, to surrender all. Of course, knowing theologically that we cannot surrender all, but from our perspective, surrender as much as possible, I suppose. I'm going to skip over the notes about the author. They are interesting. I guess I'll mention a few things real quick. He was an active layman in his church. He was a teacher by trade, and he felt the calling of the Lord to pastor for about 5 years. And he kept putting it aside, and finally he came to the point where he surrendered his life over to the full-time ministry, and that is when he used his talents of songwriting to also write this song, I Surrender All. And then throughout the rest of his life, he traveled throughout the U.S., England, and Scotland, preaching the gospel. If you would, really quick with me, turn with me to Matthew 4:18. I'm just going to start reading, you guys can catch up. Matthew 4:18. And Jesus, walking by the Sea of Galilee, saw two brethren, Simon called Peter, and Andrew his brother, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishers. And he saith unto them, Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. And they straightway left their nets and followed him. And going on from thence, he saw other two brethren, James the son of Zebedee, and John his brother in a ship with Zebedee, their father, mending their nets. And he called them. And they immediately left the ship and their father and followed him. And Jesus went about all Galilee, teaching in their synagogues, and preaching the gospel of the kingdom, and healing all manner of sickness and all manner of disease among the people. So what we read in this passage is, of course, an example of great surrender. Peter, Andrew, James, and John left everything they knew to follow Jesus. We read in verse 20, and they straightway or immediately left their nets and followed him. I was thinking about this for the last few days, and I kept thinking about what did their nets represent? Well, we know that they were fishermen by trade, of course, as the scripture tells us. So the nets were the tools of their livelihood. If they didn't have a net, they couldn't catch fish. If they didn't catch fish, then they couldn't sell fish. And if they couldn't sell fish, then they couldn't pay for their Yeezy booths and their lattes and their avocado toast. No, obviously I kid, but if they couldn't sell fish, then they couldn't eat. They had nothing. I don't know this for certain, but judging by the time period, they were most likely what we would call sustenance farmers or sustenance fishers. They probably didn't have a great deal set aside. They needed to catch fish that day to be able to eat that evening. They couldn't provide for themselves without these nets. Those nets represented security for these men. Yeah. These were hard-working men. It's a good reminder, too, that they weren't being called to leave evil aside. A lot of times that's where we set our focus when we say that we've been called to do something. We think we're being called out. We have to leave the evil deeds of our former life aside. And of course, that is true as well. That's the starting point. But this was much more than just leaving their former misdeeds or their sinful behaviors, their sinful practices behind. This was a call to leave their security on this earth behind. What they were leaving wasn't really that important. What was important was who was doing the calling. And the same is true today. The truth is, many of us hear a call from the same one that called Peter, Andrew, James, and John, and we go. We leave our boat, and we're so proud that we're following it. We don't even realize we're still dragging our nets behind us. I don't know what the nets represent for each of us in our lives. Only you and the Lord know that. But can we say that we have left our nets there at the shore? And if not, it's never too late. Amen. We can drop our nets today and truly follow Christ. If we're being honest, each of us is carrying something with us, of course. As I said, it's impossible for us to surrender all. We're all holding on to something. It may be something very, very different for each and every one of us. As I said, we need to look inside of our hearts, and as Pastor said on Wednesday, when we do that, we have to be honest with ourselves, or else it's a pointless exercise. And we need to determine what is that thing that we're holding on to. To truly follow Christ, we must surrender our self-reliance. We must surrender our self-will. We must surrender our pride. That's a hard one. We must surrender our doubt and our fear. Only once we surrender these nets can we truly follow Jesus. Go back to verse 23, we read, "And Jesus went about all Galilee, teaching in their synagogues and preaching the gospel of the kingdom, and healing all manner of sickness and all manner of disease among the people." I included verse 23 in our text because I wanted to show you what they got to witness when they left their nets and followed Jesus.
Amen.
Do you think that after they heard Jesus teach with all authority and knowledge, and after they saw Jesus heal the sick and diseased, they sat around and said, "Man, I sure wish I was back with my nets. I sure wish I hadn't followed Jesus"? Of course not. If we have left our nets and followed Jesus, we won't sit around reminiscing and longing for the halcyon days of being surrounded by stinky fish. All to Jesus I surrender, humbly at his feet I bow, worldly pleasures all forsaken, take me Jesus, take me now. Again, we can't sing this hymn honestly, none of us can, no human ever alive has been able to, but we can sing them prayerfully.
Amen.
These words are our desire, and we lift that desire up to God. Again, I just want to, whenever I get the opportunity, I want to spend some time looking at some of these hymns that we know well. I've been in churches my entire life, obviously, and many of us here have, and we all know all too well the complacency that has infected so many of our churches in all spiritual aspects, really. But for our purposes, I just want to look specifically and have us think specifically about the worship hour. Brother John is about to come up, and we're about to open those hymnals again. And I just would implore each and every one of us, including myself, of course, to truly ponder and wonder at the words that we are singing. Consider how they apply to our lives. Consider when we sing about his blessings, make that personal to yourself. Think about the blessings, the mighty blessings that we have had in our lives. So again, that's all I have. But again, I challenge each of us to truly consider these words and to not just be reading words off the page and spitting empty words out in song. So with that, Brother John, would you come and lead us in verse song?